Alarming lead levels have been found in the drinking water at some San Diego schools. San Diegans may get yet another chance to vote on the expanded convention center this November. Our freeways and bridges are in bad shape, but will the state hike the gas tax to pay for repairs? And in Mexico last week, San Diego and Baja California vowed to work together no matter what the U.S. does. I'm Mark Sauer. The KPBS Roundtable starts now. Welcome to our discussion of the week's top stories. I'm Mark Sauer, and joining me at the KPBS Roundtable today, reporter Wendy Fry of NBC7 San Diego. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Mark.
Glad you're here today. Michael Smolin's politics editor for the San Diego Union-Tribune. Hi, Michael.
How you doing, Mark?
Very well today. And Chris Genuine, editor and publisher of the Times of San Diego. Hi, Chris.
Great to be here, Mark.
Good to have you. And KPBS Frontiers reporter Jean Guerrero. Hi, Jean.
Hey, Mark.
Well, testing began on drinking water in about 200 San Diego schools this week. The examination follows discovery of levels of lead and other contaminants at two San Diego Unified schools, Emerson Bandini and San Diego Cooperative Charter in Southcrest, that is. They share the same campus. Earlier, the same problem was discovered at La Mirada Elementary in San Ysidro. So, Wendy, multiple stories here. Give us the rundown. When was this discovered? It's been a couple of months now, right?
Right. So at San Diego Unified, that's one of the storylines there. January 26th is when the district received word that a dog wouldn't drink the water. And so they said they sent samples out right then for testing. And it's on a parallel line as many other school districts. So La Mesa Spring Valley has done all of its testing and posted on its website. You also had the issue in San Ysidro. That was back in October 2016 that they discovered it. It became in the news closer to the February that we learned that the kids are drinking bottled water at La Mirada. And most of the school districts in the county are in the process of getting their water tested for lead.
Yeah, suddenly there's just kind of a rash of stories about this water problem at these various schools. Now, how are the schools in the districts reacting? Are they forthcoming with this information as it happens?
Right. So you see different responses at different school districts. La Mesa Spring Valley did something interesting. They contracted right with the lab, right with an environmental firm to get all the testing and put it up on their website a little bit more quickly probably than they could have if they were working with Helix Water District, just because all these water districts have all the schools in the county requesting the testing too. Then you saw in San Ysidro, once we did find out about what was going on at La Mirada, they were very, very forthcoming with information, giving us the lab results, giving us a tour of the school to see the bottled water, see where the fountain was turned off. San Diego Unified, we've had some trouble getting some information, getting all our all the questions and all of the answers that we're looking for. And the timeline is a little bit interesting. So we discovered in emails, and it was through a public records act to the city of San Diego, that they had actually found out about this very dangerous chemical, vinyl chloride, back on February 9th. The district has said they've been very, very open with parents, but a lot of the communication with parents, they said they sent an email out February 10th, but it says that they got test results back for non-detectable levels of bacteria. And doesn't say anything about the dangerous chemical that they had found in the water and they knew of as of February 9th.
Chris?
So,
how bad is this compared to, say, what's happening in Flint, Michigan?
Right. So in Flint, Michigan, a lot more homes and way, way higher levels of lead.
Scope is just much bigger.
Yeah, the scope is much bigger. And they
have
a lot more lead service lines, which is contributing to kind of a wider scope of the problem.
What's the basic problem here that they're discovering as they go along?
Well, this is something that seems kind of to be missed. I've seen it in a few reports. Lead cannot leach into your water unless there is a problem with both the plumbing and the water. The water has to be corrosive in some nature to corrode the lead to leach into it.
So do we have a water problem here?
Well, so the city treats the water with chloramine, which is been shown to increase levels of lead, but they do a very good job, according to the water experts I've talked to, of managing their corrosivity. But it's just an issue that you face with a chemical like that.
So that leaves a distribution problem. It's the pipes are the culprit then?
Well, they have a very old plumbing in some of these schools. It might be the water fountains. It might be brass, because brass also can leach lead in the fixtures in more of the plumbing inside the schools. It could be a number of problems. They're going to have to work to figure out what it is and replace it.
Jean?
Are these schools recommending that the children go to doctors? Is it a very serious level of...
We haven't seen any schools recommend that the kids get tested. There are a lot of pediatricians and health experts and people concerned that the parents should be taking their kids to get their lead poisoning levels checked, and also for any other chemicals.
Michael?
You had reported that one school nurse identified or noticed some kids actually getting physically ill, throwing up after drinking the water. Did that ever develop? Was it a cause and effect, or was it just sort of circumstance? The flu was going around.
A couple of kids, who knows?
We don't know.
Yeah.
The consultant that the district hired to come in and test the water included it in her report because there's some emails in there that the chemicals that she found would be consistent with what was happening with the kids, and she advised them to investigate that further, to develop data, to go and ask other schools if they've been seeing that problem. We don't know if the school district did that or not.
Now, how are parents and people in the community going to find out now about the test results on them?
So the school district is posting
That's the San Diego school.
The San Diego Unified School District is posting it on its website. A lot of the school districts have said they either plan to post it on their website or they're going to be
as transparent as possible.
Sharing the results with the parents as they get them.
Well, we'll certainly watch this as we go forward and what those results show. We are going to move on. San Diego no longer needs hundreds of millions of dollars for a new NFL football stadium, but the revenue spigot for that funding, a hike in hotel taxes, is still available. And Mayor Kevin Faulconer and other civic leaders have big plans for big money, such as a hike represents. The mayor proposed an ambitious ballot measure this week. Here's how he introduced it.
Of course, the only people that will have to pay this very modest increase are the tourists and the convention goers staying overnight in San Diego. And meanwhile, San Diegans will receive the benefits.
Well, isn't that nice of all those folks to come here and give us all these benefits? Talk about these benefits, Michael. What are the high points of this proposal here?
Well, the key thing, as they've been trying to do for years and run into legal problems and other logistical issues, is expanding the convention center. The tourism industry believes it's too small. There's always been the threat of Comic-Con, which is second to the Chargers, or maybe even more important to some people than the Chargers. We've got to keep Comic-Con, so therefore we have to expand it. So they're proposing, the mayor and his allies are proposing raising the hotel tax anywhere from 1% to 3%, depending on how close the hotels are to the would-be expanded convention center and the benefit they would get. As sort of sweeteners, if you will, or to expand the base of support, some of it would also, the money would also go to fixing roads and to, trying to deal with our homeless problem, which has been, so acute in recent years. Maybe even longer than that.
Two chronic problems, infrastructure and homelessness.
But as with every hotel tax that's come down the pike, it faces a 2/3 vote, and that's extraordinarily difficult in San Diego. I mean, in my view, you almost have an automatic third no vote against anything on a ballot, and something controversial, and this will have opposition. It'll be a very difficult threshold to meet. But they think in this special election they'll have a select audience in November. It hasn't been approved yet, but it almost certainly will be. And they think that the coalition, including roads, which everybody likes road repairs, and increasingly people are concerned about the homeless. So that and this notion that outsiders will be paying for it, they hope, they've looked at numbers and polling numbers, they think they've got a good shot.
Chris?
Won't the Soccer City measure possibly also be on the ballot, providing another incentive to get people out to vote?
Yeah. Remind us what that is briefly.
Well, now that the Chargers have left town, there's what happens with the Qualcomm site in Mission Valley, and of course that's been eyed for all sorts of development, including stadiums for forever. And FS Investors, this group, has proposed what's called Soccer City, and yes, it would include a soccer stadium for, they hope to get a Major League Soccer franchise.
And / college football stadium.
Yeah, if San Diego State's not too wild about this proposal. But the real aspect of this is it's a very large development right in the center of Mission Valley. There's like almost 5,000 housing units of various types, huge commercial
stuff,
areas
yeah.
and hotels.
And a big park.
Along with this. But, you know, and they're not shy about it. They're very serious. They want to be the franchise for Major League Soccer. But that's sort of an incentive. It's the sports aspect as opposed to here, this is just another big development. Let's bring major sports back to San Diego. No, it's not the NFL. Now, you mentioned San Diego State. The whole idea was that San Diego State would sign on to this because they will need a stadium of some sorts because Qualcomm is going to go away one way or another. But they don't like it. They're sort of cautious about what they can say about it. But on the stadium front, they don't think it's big enough. They don't think it would expand enough for their needs. But even more than that, they and their allies, including John Moores, the former Padres owner, they want that basically as an extension of their campus. As we always talk about here on Montezuma Mesa, is landlocked, it's getting crowded, they need some place to expand. That's just a couple of trolley stops down the freeway. And so a lot of people are looking to that as well. So there's a lot of conflict there. And then you get competing developers.
Well, yeah. Now you got the two.
Well.
You got the two on the ballot.
Yeah.
Now, as you say, the convention center expansion and plus the homelessness aspect and the infrastructure would need 2/3. Would the Soccer City also need?
No, that's a simple majority.
Okay, and that's just because city land is involved.
Yeah, and it's very complex. It's a 3,000-page document, the Soccer City Initiative. So the question that's out there is, okay, how do these things? Is there synergy between them that one helps the other, or does something hurt one or the other? I don't know. It seems like the mayor obviously is for the tax increase and the expansion and the roads and the homeless help. He's sounding like, although he hasn't, that he's going to get on board behind Soccer City. That's what a lot of people are saying.
So maybe Soccer City passes and the other one doesn't.
It could be one passes, the other doesn't, or we could find that all of this major controversy for more than a decade in San Diego all gets solved at once. We have the future for professional sports, and we have the future for the convention center.
What assurances are there in the convention center ballot measure that some of the money does go to the homeless and some of the money does go to the roads?
Siphon it elsewhere.
Having worked in Sacramento for a while and seeing the assurances and how money can, there are assurances. Can they be changed? I'm sure, looking at the fine print, perhaps. But one of the key things is that what will the money actually go for? Some people have argued, there's, if not enough money, almost enough money really to help the homeless more than we're doing. But it's not coordinated. And will they fix that? They're trying to. Another question I have is that I think a big selling aspect of this is fixing our roads. People like that. The one thing that has gotten 2/3 vote is the Transnet tax. We've passed it twice or extended it. But now we get into what I think Chris is going to talk about. The state's talking about this gigantic multi-billion-dollar tax increase, gas tax and otherwise. So are people going to say, gee, why are we raising our local tax?
Yeah, it seems redundant. Well, that's a wonderful segue. Thank you very much. You can sit over here next to That's great. Well, it's not just San Diego roadways that are crumbling. Highways, bridges, and streets across California have long been neglected and are in desperate need of repair. That's the message this week from Governor Jerry Brown, who's pushing a big hike in the excise tax on gasoline, and that's not been raised in 23 years. Here's the governor talking about critics and why the measure is necessary.
There'll be some critics that'll say, oh, it costs money. Yes, it costs money. And if the roof in your house is, leaking, you better fix it because it gets worse all the time. And this is mostly about fixing what we already have. If, for some reason, people try to fight this, and God help us, they were successful, they won't stop it. They'll just delay it and make the expenses go up.
All right, we're not talking about a big public vote here. This is something that the legislature, Democrat-controlled legislature, and the governor can do on their own. How much of a tax hike are we talking about? How much revenue is generated?
It's the biggest hike in the gas tax. It's the only hike in the gas tax in over 20 years. So it's 12 cents on gasoline. It's 20 cents on diesel fuel. There's also going to be an increase in license fees. So the average person would pay $38 more per year for license. And interestingly, even electric car owners come in for something, $100 a year because they don't buy gas, but they use the road. It'll raise $52 billion over a 10-year period. To put that in perspective, it'll be in each year it'll be about a third bigger than what Caltrans currently has to work with. So it's a sizable increase in the resources going to going to road repair and bridge repair.
And what are they figuring the backlog is that the governor's talking about that? So
I've seen some really big numbers, as much as $130 billion. And if you look at it that way, you're talking about 25, 30 years to get all these things fixed. But fact of the matter is, California's become very big. It's a gigantic state, and it's been over 20 years since we've raised the gas tax rate. Even though the price of gas has gone way up in that period.
Yeah, we're certainly all used to seeing big spikes in gas. 12 cents doesn't sound that outrageous when the pump is so volatile.
Chris, you mentioned that there is a fee for electric cars and so forth. And part of the problem has been that while the gas tax has been stagnant, also cars have gotten more efficient. Some aren't using gas at all or very little if it's a hybrid. But as we move into the future, even a 10-year period, is that going to change dramatically? And will that $100 fee make up for that loss of real gas, combustion engine cars?
That's an awfully good question. They have some special escalator clauses built into the legislation, which, by the way, apparently will be signed today. The legislature late last night did approve it, so it looks like it's on its way to.
Well, that was quick.
Yeah, it was very quick. So it's on its way to Governor Brown's signature. But what's fairly interesting is the tax on diesel engines and diesel fuel is much higher. There's also a special extra tax on diesel engines because, let's face it, trucks, heavy equipment, that's what does most of the damage to roads that requires this kind of repair. So it's not just ordinary commuters who are paying it. It's the trucking industry, it's truckers, it's the construction industry.
I've got a bite here. Republicans aren't that happy about this whole proposal. Assemblyman Chad Mays of Yucca Valley here.
They're going to do this all on their own. And see, that's what happens when you have one-party rule. We would have loved it if they would have come and had a conversation with us, just one conversation, to say, let's work together in a bipartisan manner to come up with a proposal to be able to fix our roads. That didn't happen.
So it didn't happen. So it looks like the Democrats and the governor have had their way. Now, will this impact San Diego? Will we not need so much? We're going to get some money from the state, just like every other county, I imagine.
It's certainly going to help San Diego. It's primarily it's state roads, so you're not going to get down to the neighborhoods resurfacing your own street. That's where road repairs and that's where things like the hotel tax come in here in San Diego. It is very much a political victory for Jerry Brown. His very practical approach over the years to state fiscal needs. It was very interesting in Riverside earlier this week. He was drumming up support, and he said that in his inimitable words, the tooth fairy is not going to fix California's roads. Yeah. And you mentioned the Republicans. There was a very interesting and odd alliance between the Republicans and environmentalists on this. The Republicans didn't want taxes up. Environmentalists didn't want roads fixed because that means more driving.
Now, Brown, as you say, is his style here. He did say, I'm going to go to my ranch in 2 years, and he's done with the governorship then. You want to have a screwed up state with a bunch of potholes? Go ahead. That's insane. Gonna miss you, Jerry. One last little bill I wanted to shift to before we leave this topic. It's in Sacramento now. Shirley Weber of San Diego are going to move the tenure probationary period for school teachers from 2 to 3 years here. Supporters, some teachers themselves say you need that much time to figure out if you got a good teacher in your hands or not. What's the likelihood of that going through?
The big question here is, how long does a new public school teacher need before that person can be evaluated as a fine teacher and gets what is very close to lifetime job security under tenure? And that's a very important question. The argument here is that in California, it's 2 years and sometimes only 18 months. That's not long enough. You're either under pressure to quickly move the person into tenure, or you didn't give them enough chance. So her bill would say you need at least 3 years, and in some cases 4 to 5 years, depending upon the school district. And it's this is not the first time this has been proposed. Governor Schwarzenegger, Republican, proposed it with Prop 74 back in 2005, and that lost amid a lot of opposition from the teachers' unions.
Well, we'll see how that goes and if the fight plays out this time. Well, a border wall, mass deportations, a plan to blow up NAFTA. Donald Trump has made both threats and promises when it comes to our relationship with Mexico. And it's understandable if leaders there are bewildered by our new U.S. president. That's why cross-border leaders from San Diego and Tijuana went to Mexico City last week. Jean, who were these folks? Who was in the delegation and what was their overall mission?
So it was organized by the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce. It had politicians from both San Diego and Northern Baja, as well as business leaders from both sides of the border. And their main mission was they wanted to tell the federal Mexican government not to give up on the U.S.-Mexico relationship and point out that the national narrative, which is sort of negative surrounding the relationship, it doesn't apply everywhere, and that the region views Mexico as a crucial business partner both now and perhaps even more so in the future.
And Donald Trump has done a lot of bashing of NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, which of course includes Canada as well. It's not really disliked so much by the folks here who are on the ground in this region as it is by politicians in Washington, at least by that politician.
Right. The region here, they argue that it's really benefited both San Diego and Tijuana, because if you have supply chains that cross the border, they argue you have greater profits, more jobs, because things can be cheaper to make and you can take advantage of the different strengths of different industries on either side of the border. One company that was on the delegation, which I spoke to, mentioned that they were able to shift lower skilled jobs to Tijuana, and as a result of those cost savings, they were able to create more higher skilled jobs in San Diego. And the Mayor Faulkner was talking to me about how the San Diego-Tijuana region has become the world's largest manufacturing hub for medical devices, precisely because of the collaboration between San Diego and Tijuana.
Okay, I do have, I'll come right back to you, Michael. I do have a clip that sets up beautifully here about the cooperation. This is from your story with Juan Ernesto Pardinas about the cross-border cooperation.
Juan Ernesto Pardinas heads the Mexican Institute of Competitiveness and was an advisor to President Obama. He praised the cross-border bridge built between San Diego and Tijuana 2 years ago so that people can enter the Tijuana airport more easily from San Diego.
How could we multiply this example of very tangible cooperation between the two countries, the two economies, basically to make life easier for people both sides of the border?
So that kind of lays it all out there in the cooperation you were talking about. What are some of the other things they'd like to see regarding cross-border commerce?
So these projects were some of the ones that they were promoting down there. Otay 2, it's a toll-operated port of entry that's planned for 2021. There have been multiple repeated delays, and so they went down there to try to get support from the Mexican federal government. And they actually met with the equivalent of the Secretary of State, Luis Videgaray, in Mexico, and he said that he's going to become a leader in supporting this project. He's going to try to get funding for it. Also, there's a southbound pedestrian entrance to Ped West, where Ped West opened last year, and so they want a southbound entrance, so it's not just northbound. They want to move forward with the binational railroad. So they had conversations with key people in the Mexican government to make sure that these projects move forward. And it looks like they got a lot of commitments.
Good. Michael, you were going to say?
Well, it was interesting from the reporting from Jeannie and our reporter, Sandra Dibble, that the Mexican federal government and officials really are embracing and highlighting this. This is what we should be doing, cooperating, and of course that's music to the ears of the cross-border coalition here. But also, I think it seems on the national level that Mexico was sort of knocked back on its heels during the campaign and the early part of the Trump administration. Now they're sort of in a bring-it-on mode. We'll renegotiate NAFTA, but sort of we're going to look out for our terms. They want to start looking to other countries. They've talked about, it may not pass, but boycotting U.S. corn, which is a huge deal in the Midwest. So they're kind of getting a little bit more aggressive, and we've seen some early takes of what Trump's administration is talking about, stuff that's been leaked out, and the revamping of NAFTA isn't quite the overhaul, at least at this stage, as he's been talking about. So right. I think there's a lot to play out, but it's an interesting dynamic for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely been a pullback. The economic nationalists in the Trump administration seem to be losing some ground in this argument. And, it almost makes you wonder whether what San Diego is doing, its relationship with Mexico, that couldn't set a standard or more of a model for the rest of the United States.
That is what they were saying, that, that we need to do more of this. And I think we were going to talk about a memorandum of understanding that was signed between the Mexican Senate and the chamber. Yeah,
tell us about that.
Yeah, so that was a key thing that happened while I was down there. They signed this MOU with the Mexican Senate, basically agreeing to collaborate on legislation that affects ports of entry, that affects trade, immigration. So they'll be sitting down 2 times a year, once in San Diego, which is key. They're going to have Mexican Senate members coming here and seeing with their own eyes what are the needs. And they were talking about how, they want to take this MOU and show it to other cross-border business groups in other parts of the border so that they can adopt something similar with Mexican federal legislators.
All right, short time left here. What was the response down in Mexico of leaders there about Trump wanting to disrupt the workings or redo NAFTA or whatever he's going to do?
So what was really interesting about that is, they're willing to modernize, to update, to rework NAFTA. This is some people in Mexico argue that NAFTA has unfairly benefited the U.S. and that Mexico got the short end of the stick. So they're totally willing to talk about it. But what's interesting is the deputy economy minister who spoke to the delegation, he said Mexico is absolutely unwilling to discuss anything that limits trade between the two countries. He called that kind of thinking 80s. He said it was very 80s, and Mexico would walk away from any talks that involved that.
Okay, well, it's going to be very interesting going forward to see what happens with the Trump administration, the reactions there, and of course within our own border region where this is so important. We'll look forward to your reporting on that. Well, we're out of time. That does wrap up another week of stories at the KPBS Roundtable. I'd like to thank my guests, Wendy Fry of NBC 7 San Diego, Michael Smolens of the San Diego Union Tribune, Chris Genowine of the Times of San Diego, and Jean Guerrero of KPBS News. A reminder, all the stories we discussed today are available on our website, kpbs.org. I'm Mark Sauer. Thanks for joining us today on the Roundtable.